So let it be written, so let it be done. This is Tabletop Terrors. And today we're going to talk about character goals and how they maybe don't have to align. Now, this is a little bit more of an advanced tip, but it's applicable in almost every game I've ever played in, which is D&D, by its definition, is a collaborative storytelling game, and we all play it together. So it's a co-op game. But because it's a storytelling game, it's a game of conflict. It's a game of things that players want, their characters want, goals and desires. And we want to talk about how sometimes those goals and desires can be different and even conflict, and that's okay. So I think the important thing is, how do you actually do that? How do you have a group of people in a game with maybe some desires and goals that don't necessarily jive, or even some are in conflict, and still have a productive game that doesn't become chaos or doesn't become a negative experience?
Yeah, I think that in D&D, there are a lot of things that are fun and are fun for different people. But for me, one of the things I really like is playing my character in the story. The important thing is, part of that, if there's 4 players and a GM, 1/5 of that is all me. And so when I first started playing, my goal would be whatever the campaign goal was, right? So my goal is, we got to break into the vault because that's what we'd said in the session 0. But later, as it got sort of more complex, and certainly when I started playing with people that really focused a lot more on characters, and a part of it is developing your character, I started to think, well, no, what would I really want in this world? Okay, we're trying to break into the vault because that'll make a better life, whatever. But who is that for? Am I selfish? Do I want to keep that money? Am I, do I have a daughter that I want to send it back to? It's important to start devising your own feelings sort of about how your character feels about the world. But the important thing is, in order for them to see any play, they have to kind of get out. So basically, it's important in some cases to have these desires, but it's okay to have desires that might go against what someone else has even said directly that they want. So for example, you want to break into the vault and you can't wait to get your share, but maybe one of the other characters plans to try and convince everybody to give all this money away. That's okay. You're going to break into the vault either way, and you might get a really cool role play scene where you discuss that, or it comes up a few times. This is technically conflict, but it's not conflict in the way that you're trying to steal from someone. And I think that it gets even better if you can sort of not necessarily coordinate with that character, but you knowing about their goals and them knowing about yours, and separating your player from your character. You can engineer situations that make it way cooler that you guys are at odds, instead of just agreeing on everything and, friendship is magic kind of deal.
So we talk about this a lot. You're going to hear us talk about session 0, session 0, session 0. You know what I mean? So there is a video we have on this that you should watch, which is basically, you are agreeing going in on what is allowed in the campaign. I'll leave it there. But I think that this can be really, really cool when you decide going in that this is going to be the case. We've talked about this in the past, but when these kinds of things are a surprise, they can be very negative, and there's little benefit from that. But when these things are agreed upon between mature players, it can be really, really neat, because both will say that Jeff and I have characters that are at odds. Using James' example, I specifically want to steal something else from the safe, and Jeff doesn't want that thing to be stolen for whatever reason. So if we both know that in the session 0 that, oh, I actually want the Maltese Falcon from the safe, and Jeff doesn't want it, it's really cool building up to that moment, because as we're going in and we're getting ready to loot this safe, we both know and can have moments leading up to, and then when it happens, both of us are prepared. We're in the safe, we're looking at the object, and we've had plenty of time to prepare. We've had plenty of time to understand meta, kind of what we would do and how we would do it based on the rest of the things that happen in the campaign. And these create, in my opinion, some of the richest story moments. Rather than, okay, we go, we get it, okay, we have the things we wanted to steal from the vault, and the conflict is we have to fight the bad guys. We're going to kill some guards. The end. Okay, what's the next mission? These memorable moments come from conflict, and as James said, some of the best things are player conflict. And so I'm actually going to throw it to you, Jeff. Like, we've been talking a lot about characters in game, but I'm kind of realizing, okay, that has a lot to do with players out of game. How does that stuff interact and link together?
Yeah, so it's important to note when it comes to group conflict that you can't always assume that every person is going to be on the same page about exactly what's the game is supposed to be about and how these events are supposed to play a part. And that can be just as important as the character goals lining up in good or bad ways, to know that the player goals are actually going to line up in the same sorts of good ways. Because what you don't want is for your character conflict to turn into actual people in real life getting mad at each other over the game. And the way that can sometimes happen a lot is people wanting different things out of the game and not having that line up the right way. So, for example, I know playing, because I played with Tim, Tim is the sort of person who will cause problems in a game on purpose because it's more interesting than having everything go smoothly. And like, that's not an insult. Like, I like it actually as a player, but there are a lot of people who also want to play the game the absolute best that they can, to make every right decision to maximize their chance at success, you know? So if I put a person like that in a game with Tim, and Tim's going around, and then I trip and I accidentally yell, even though the guard's right there and we're trying to steal from the vault, like, that guy might get upset because he's like, wait, what? No, why would you do that? You just don't do that. Like, because then we can succeed. And that's what I want. So it's just, whenever you have these sorts of conflicts, you need to make sure that they're not going to be unresolvable in the game or out of the game. Of like, if it's going to come out later in the game that I'm, this lawful good paladin and the other person's a warlock, devoted to some demon, that when we figure out that we're on the opposite sides of this cosmic battle, we're never going to be able to work with each other or get along ever again because we're too far at odds. Like, so you have to talk ahead of time. Okay, we have this landmine that's on the road here. If this comes out, there's going to be conflict. Is this conflict going to be manageable? Can we actually have these characters continue to play in the same game with each other when it's discovered that they're so far opposed? And if the answer is no, that's not the place you put the character conflict. You say, okay, let's maybe find some compromise point here ahead of time, so that way when we get to that bridge, it doesn't collapse under our feet, that we can find some way across it. And making sure that, like, okay, so if that conflict is going to come up, that's going to put stress on the characters in the game, which is like technically not optimal. Like, the game would be better if we didn't have those problems and we didn't sort of kick our own feet out from under us. Is everybody cool with that? Yes? Okay, let's do it, because we want the drama of that more than we want the perfect play style of approach, and just making sure that everyone's on the same page going into these sorts of conflicts can make it so much easier to actually navigate them. Because then when you do get there, it's drama in the story that everyone gets to enjoy experiencing, and not frustrations with the experience that the players are having because they didn't know that this was going to happen, or I'm not going to play with this other person because they do this. It just helps smooth out a lot of those potential problems. So having those conversations openly ahead of time, and like Tim said, it doesn't need to be a surprise. The surprise part is not the interesting part of like, oh, did you know my character is actually devoted to this demon of death? Haha, paladin, what are we going to do? Like, no, you don't want that to be a surprise, because that's when you get the most conflict as players. And you don't want player conflict, you want character conflict. And the most you can do to make sure that those things stay divided, it's all the better for taking those steps and making sure that those conflicts can exist in the game without destroying the game. And if they can't exist in the game without destroying the game, then don't put them in the game. And that's okay. Like, conflict is fun and drama is fun, but if it's destroying the experience, then it's not worth that. And you can find other drama and other conflict that's not quite so delicate a balance and do that instead.
So in the comments, what is the most satisfying inter-party conflict you've ever been a part of? We've all heard the horror stories of the jerkwad who stole and all that. So I'm not looking for like the worst thing that ever happened, because there's plenty of that. What I'm really looking for is like, was there a meaningful moment in a game you played in where people in the party disagreed on something and it resulted in a really cool scene or a really cool outcome or something that was different than it would have been if everyone agreed together? That would be really cool to hear about. We're Tabletop Terrors, and we're all about fun, creativity, and tabletop games. If you like those sorts of things, consider subscribing, and be sure to hit the notification bell so you're notified whenever we have new videos come out. We always end our videos with a Tabtarian toast.
May you mend the first break.
May you kill the first snake.
May you conquer everything you undertake.
Slancha.
Mirepoix.
So I was nervous when you recommended this topic, James, because what it could have been if we weren't careful. I didn't want to encourage people to put conflict in their games if they weren't equipped to do it. That was my main thing. I was like, okay, what is the tip? Hey, you guys should start beef with each other. But it's a really valuable tip. You know what it is to me? It's almost like a hot pepper. A little bit of it is just that kick that's perfect and is great, and then if you put too much in there, you're just like, oh my god, all I taste is this. And so yeah, I'm really glad you recommended it, even though at first I was like, well